I'm Greg DePalma, and you're listening to Prime Sports Golf, brought to you by ProGolfWeekly.com and uwager.eu, with Jeff Shane and Joel Cook on the Prime Sports Radio Network. On today's show, once or twice a year, a player decides to win a PGA Tour event from nowhere, and that's just what took place at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am on Sunday. We'll recap Ted Potter's disturbing win. And as always, we'll preview this week's PGA Tour event as Tiger returns to action at the Genesis. We'll go over the latest stats, odds, and give you our picks as Prime Sports Golf starts now. Is in bloom, the transmissions will resume. I try to push, try to keep us all down and hope that we will never. All right, thanks again for joining us for another great week of golf coverage along with our partners at ProGolfWeekly.com. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN and receive our latest opinions and on-demand programming alerts. Don't forget, if you're looking for somewhere to wager and get fast, reliable playouts, just click on the UWager banner on our website and get started with wagering this week on the Genesis Open. Of course, you want to wait for our picks first. But no Ted Potters this week or any week. So you'll be throwing your money away. First, though, I'd like to introduce a pair of top golf analysts to the show. He's a PGAtour.com contributor, where you can find his first look reports every Friday prior to each event on the PGA Tour, Jeff Shane. And Jeff, I know it's me. I get it. As you're aware, I get very frustrated when a Ted Potter wins on the PGA Tour, and especially at an event, where a lot of the top players get together. Because let's face it, the only people who ended up happy about the result were basically Ted Potter, his family, and friends. So yes, I'm allowed to be a grouch once or twice a year. Just about the same amount of times the Ted Potters of the world win on the PGA Tour.
Well, I mean, the pride of Ocala, Florida is. I'm sure that the entire town is.
Okay, the town
is happy about it.
All right.
But the thing about Ted Potter, and with my background in Florida, I probably know a little bit more about him than the average PGA Tour fan, and he's one of those guys that, when he finds his groove, he is, I don't want to say untouchable, but he's right there. And that's exactly where he was at Pebble Beach. The thing is that his career arc is full of spikes and anti-spikes, just high peaks and low valleys. Consider the fact that he has missed the cut in 46 of 84 career PGA Tour starts.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than half.
Yeah.
And yet, when he gets to the weekend, he wins 1 out of every 19 times. Go figure.
All right. That's not a bad percentage. Also joining us from ProGolfWeekly.com. That's a weekly digital magazine that covers pro golf around the globe. ProGolfWeekly.com lead writer Joel Cook. So, Joel, we're going to see some new faces on the PGA Tour for 2018. We've got some international players coming over, playing in the States for the first time, getting ready for a pretty big stretch run. Maybe some of them will stay all the way through to the Masters. I don't know. And we also have a gentleman by the name of Tiger making a return. So it's a pretty good field this week, and it's also a very good long shot field. So, we didn't like the long shots last week, but there's a lot of good long shots this week.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say it to you guys. Looking at the odds this week, this might be the greatest group of 125 to 1 long shots I've ever seen. I mean, you can make an entire fantasy team based on the names in there. A lot of great ones. It's going to be tough to decide where I want to go with that this week. Yeah, it's a good field. The international guys coming over. It's the first time we're going to see guys like Tommy Fleetwood and Charles Schwartzel, and Thomas Pieters finished second here last year. We'll get to see him again after a season where he didn't quite take the step forward we were expecting. And yeah, then Tiger, obviously, that's the big draw. If he can hit any fairways this week, he's this is a course he's never won before.
That's true.
It feels like this is the only course you can say that about. But his short game is on right now, and if he hits some fairways this week, maybe he's worth watching.
Yeah, this is definitely different from when we talked about Tiger a couple of weeks ago. This is not an event where if we're thinking he's going to break out and contend,
real fast out of the gates. Not going to expect that to happen this week. But then again, hey, Ted Potter won last week, so anything is possible. Some players that played pretty well last week that will not be here this week, Jeff, includes Jason Day. And boy, Jason Day looks like he is officially back. And watch out, because as long as he can stay healthy, we know how good he can be.
Absolutely, and I think health had to be the first issue on his plate, and that's why he played very sparsely in the fall. He only played one event in his homeland at the Australian Open. He did not play the Australian PGA. He tried to make sure that he was that he was scheduled properly, and even he admitted after winning in Torrey Pines that his back was still a little tender. But it's been good enough to go 1-2 in his 2 starts of 2018, and if he can manage the back, everything else looks pretty good right now.
All right, and there were some other players that participated at the Pro-Am last week that won't be playing this week, including John Rahm, so he's taking the week off, and some other players that we'll also be seeing sometime later on down the road, but it's still going to be a really good field this week with Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, McIlroy, Thomas, and a bunch of other pretty good players. Again, this is more, though, of a good depth field, as we just said. There are a lot of good long shots, a lot of depth. See, last week we didn't get the depth. We had a little bit more star power, not depth. This week we have a few stars, but a lot of good depth. What's the difference with Riviera compared to any of the other stops on the West Coast, Jeff, that will be a drawing spot? What is it specifically? Why do players want to play here, or maybe want to avoid the country club?
I'll contend that this is the best field that we've seen this calendar year, and I'll even put the Tournament of Champions in there, because Tournament of Champions didn't get Rory McIlroy. It didn't get any of the European stars, in fact. And we have a McIlroy, we have Alex Noren, we're starting to see some of those guys come across, and it's partially the scheduling, because it is the final event of the West Coast Swing. We are now within 2 months of the Masters, and it's traditionally the time when the Europeans, depending on how they want to set their schedules up, want to come over and start playing the U.S. Tour. And then once they get here, they tend to stay for 6 weeks to 2 months until the Masters and even beyond. So we're starting to see that trickle come over. Riviera is just a classic golf course, and one of the favorite courses on the PGA Tour. They haven't had to do much to it over the years to keep it relevant, keep it challenging. George Thomas, he's not a Tillinghast, he's not a Donald Ross, he's not that kind of renowned designer, but boy, did he create a gem in Pacific Palisades, California, with some quirky things. And the par 3 10th is the prototype. Going back to 1927, it is the classic risk-reward par 3. And even though a lot of birdies can be made on it, we've seen a lot of players get in some deep trouble in critical situations when they go to a playoff at the par 3 10th. And so I think you just roll all of those together. It is Los Angeles. It's a little bit, obviously it's got the sparkle to it. And we have a field here where we've got, I believe it's a dozen of the top 25 in the world rankings coming over to play. So it's appealing on multi-levels.
All right, and so no particular. You take a look at some of the former champions, Joel. Anything that you noticed as far as the type of player that has won here before? Anything at all?
Well, the recent ones have been bombers. Between Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson. That's who I was thinking of. Between Dustin Johnson,
Phil used to be a bomber.
He is too, and he's a right curious winner of Tier 2.
Yeah.
going to mention DJ first since he was the first one there. But Bubba Watson has won this twice recently.
That's true.
That's another bomber.
Yeah.
I mean, it has pretty tight fairways, but at least in recent years, the players who can hit longer seem to be doing well here. I mean, James Hahn has better than average length. He's a little bit of an outlier. But, I mean, that's the first thing that kind of stands out. And also, you don't see very many players win this tournament who haven't played it very often, which is a little concerning. We have all these great international players coming over, but most of them haven't played it much before. I mean, Peters is kind of an exception there because he's played the once, although he has to, I think he won a tournament there in college too. And then he was second last year.
All right.
So
and what do you think overall, though, Jeff, about what you saw last week from some of the other players? Rory McIlroy, he's going to be playing this week. And it seemed like Rory was going pretty fine there up until, what was it? Was it Friday when he was at 5 under? And he had that eagle putt, and it turned into a double bogey. And then after that, it was a tournament over for Rory McIlroy. Was that a Friday?
I think that was Friday, and it's kind of the bane of West Coast golf. If you hear a golfer talk about Poa Annua is a type of grass that isn't necessarily. I don't think anybody ever plants it on a golf course intentionally, but it blows in the wind and it lands and it makes itself at home. And the thing about Poa is compared to the other grasses that are typically used, Bermuda, bent, those type of strains, is Poa grows much faster than the others, and it grows fast enough to where when you get to the afternoon, particularly the late afternoon, greens can get bumpy because of the speed at which Poa grows. And I think that's where you get some of the frustration. That's why Tiger Woods stopped playing Pebble Beach. The Poa drove him nuts. And I think we saw that a little bit with Rory in that at the wrong time. He hadn't putted on Poa all year, and it rose up and got him. And so he expressed frustration with the putter. Jordan Spieth has expressed frustration with the putter. You're going to see that in LA as well. It's native to pretty much all of California, and as much as the greenskeepers try to keep it out, it's very, very difficult to do without doing some other things that will make your greens even worse.
What about a couple of guys making comebacks? Joel, Jimmy Walker. Now, he finished 8th, so should we now be seriously thinking about taking him to win an event? And what about Sang Moon Bae finishing 15th?
Yeah, both of those were impressive. Bae just had, a lot of rust to shake off, but he had been he'd missed just 2 full years with his military commitment. He's still a young guy. He's going to be someone to really look for. I think that was really promising. And Jimmy Walker, he's a little bit older. He's 39 now, but his starts going into this week had just been absolutely abysmal. In 4 starts in the new season, he missed 3 cuts and had a T63.
Yeah.
And he played well. He had third round 73 at Pebble, but outside of that, getting double digits under par at T8 for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just the experience. He just really likes the course. I wouldn't be saying yet maybe we should be taking him for other tournaments, but maybe he's finally feeling better after all this. I know he's on a lot of medications, taking a lot of pills for his Lyme disease. Maybe something's happening there. It was nice to see him. His first decent start in a really long time. It's actually first top 10 in over a year.
All right. So this week at the Genesis Open, just like last week, Dustin Johnson is the clear favorite. Boys, you probably can't find 2 better golf courses back-to-back to attend. But Dustin was not able to close the deal on Sunday. And and that was part of the reason that Ted Potter was able to win. It wasn't that Ted Potter played fantastic on Sunday. He played well. He did what he had to do. But nobody really pressured him. And some of the players played well, But Dustin Johnson, of course, who was the one that we all thought leading in the final round that he'd be able to close the deal, and that was a very disappointing 72 from him. So I don't know exactly how that will translate this week, but Dustin is absolutely fantastic at this golf course. Even though he's only won it once, it was last year, and he's got 6 top 5s in total career at this location. So it'd be kind of unwise to forget about Dustin Johnson, even though he's a short price at 5-1. But then because Dustin is all alone there at 5-1, you can jump and start to get pretty good odds with the Spieths and the McIlroys of the world at 12-1, Thomas at 16-1, and even a couple of guys playing pretty well, Phil Mickelson and Paul Casey at 22-1 and 28-1 respectively. So there are some pretty good odds out there for everybody other than Dustin Johnson, Joel. And I know you've got the first pick. So the question is 5-1, which was good enough for me last week. Is it good enough for you this week with you having the first pick?
Are we starting the picks?
Sure.
Or are we okay? And if we're to talk about that, I mean, Dustin looks like an obvious choice at first. He won last year. He has 5 consecutive top 4 finishes there, and all 3 tournaments in the new season. He's held at least a share of the 54-hole lead. The issue with me there, though, is would I rather have Dustin Johnson at 5-1, or do I like Phil Mickelson at 22-1 better? And if we were going strictly without the odds, I'd probably take DJ. But the thing is, if Ricky Fowler was in this field, I would gamble that Mickelson might make it to my second pick. But I just don't trust him to fall past Greg at the third pick.
All right.
And we're at the last week of the Western swing. Mickelson's looking absolutely fantastic right now. I'm going to ride that momentum and take him at 22-1.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I blame you for that one. He might not have gotten past me. And you know what, Jeff, it's not necessarily because, look, he's playing really well right now. We haven't seen him play this good back-to-back events in a couple of years. And he, as we said before, he's won this event a couple of times. He had that incredible 3-year run, runner-up, playoff loss to Charles Howell, win. So he's had a lot of success here, even though he's only played here once, I believe, in the last, 4 or 5 years. And that was last year. And 22-1 odds are very good. But I think the thing that really makes a lot of sense as well, and the reason why I probably would have taken him is because I do look around him and I go, all right, even though there are some good players in this field, besides Dustin Johnson, there really isn't a player that has a lot of recent success on this golf course. Am I missing someone?
No, not really. And I'll just go ahead and say it. You would have never had a chance at Phil Mickelson, Greg.
Oh.
We all like Phil this week.
He was on my list as well, and I was going to say if Joel went with DJ, I was going to reach and get Mickelson because we have not seen him put back-to-back top 5s together since 2013. And so he's walking with a spring in his step, going to a place where he has won multiple times. And, it is the end of the West Coast swing. If there's a window that's open, it's open this week. And then after this week, it starts to close ever so slightly again until we get to April and we get to the Masters run up. So I think this is a perfect week to take Phil Mickelson. And like I say, he was certainly going to go in the number 2 slot if he lasted that long. So applause, sort of, to Joel. And I'll take the short odds. I will go with DJ because not only did he have the win last year, but he has not finished worse than 4th in the last 4 appearances, and 2 of those were runner-ups as well.
All right. So, DJ had to be gone with one of our first 3 picks. There's just no way around it. The question you just got to ask yourself is that 5-1, if you're going to go with a top player this week, or you're going to put your put all your eggs into a basket, is that enough? Is that high enough? And I think it is. I've often talked about you have to go really kind of down to maybe 3-1 ish, where I think I would normally pass on anybody, no matter what. But 5-1, especially the way Dustin's playing and the way he's played here before, I think it's a pretty good roll of the dice. And to be honest, I would have taken Dustin if I had the first pick. I would have taken Dustin over Phil. And I would have just went that way because as much as I obviously love the odds and your strategy, Joel, fact is Phil hasn't won in 4 years, and he's just disappointed a lot, and I kind of was a little bit disappointed, to tell you the truth, as well as he played this past week, and it's not because he didn't play well. This is because I was just hoping that he'd play just a little bit better, so he could have won the event and beaten Ted Potter.
He didn't really make that move until it was really late. And that's the second week in a row where we're going to the last hole and we're like, he needs to get an eagle on this hole. And he ends up going super aggressive and getting in trouble.
Yeah, he was in pretty good. There were a couple of spots where you were like, hey, if he can make this shot, make that shot. They were reasonable opportunities. But that's the one part of his game that is still not there yet. But that's okay. I mean, we've seen Phil always be even semi-erratic with his approach shots, his tee shots, and he's still so talented and such a great player that he's been able to win so many events. And I think that's where he's at his game right now. So just imagine if he just has one of those really good rounds to go along with the way he's playing, then he's going to win. And maybe he could do it at a familiar golf course this week. But I'm going to go ahead then, since DJ's off and Mickelson's off, and I think we all would agree that they might be the two best plays to start off with. I'm pretty excited to get Jordan Spieth at 12-1. Spieth has a decent, he's played pretty well here. He's got 3 top 25s, and he's got the 4th place finish 3 years ago, so he's had some success here. And that's not bad considering the fact that, as I said, it's not a whole lot of players at all have a lot of recent success here. For whatever reason, we talk a lot about that with the players. There are just some golf courses that we'll talk about this year where it's just very difficult for a wide variety of players, even just 2 or 3 of them, in an entire field that have had success at a location for the past 3 or 4 years. And so I'm okay with that. I love the odds. And I also like the fact that he had that miscut. I know that the putting, I kind of let him down, but he started to play a little bit better last week. So I think he's getting a little bit momentum coming back again. And again, I'm able to get Jordan Spieth at 12-1 when we know that he is just as talented, if not more talented, as Dustin Johnson. So he's my first pick. And Joel, that means you go next, second pick, now that you've got Phil off the board. And by the way, McIlroy is the next up at 12-1, Thomas at 16-1. And then you've got Casey at 28-1, Fleetwood at 30-1. And then we have about 7 players at 40-1 before we get to our long shot numbers at 50-1 or higher.
I'm going to go a little bit deeper again. I've recently been, over the past couple months, I've been kind of driving the Chez Reavie bandwagon.
That's true.
And I regretfully did not get him last week when I had the chance. I just had a feeling about Rafa Cabrera-Bello, and he kind of let me down on the weekend. But Reavie is just playing so good right now. Back-to-back second place finishes. He's got 8 top 25s in 9 events, and his tee to green game has just been phenomenal lately. He's hitting fairways, which is great on a course like that. That's kind of tight. He's 5th in strokes gained tee to green. He was 8th in strokes gained approach, 10th around the greens. He only had 2 bogeys on the entire weekend last week. And this is a course where I think bogey avoidance is going to be important. And he was third, and usually in the part that was less phenomenal coming in the week was his putting, but he was 3rd in strokes gained putting last week, or in as little as we can tell, since Pebble has all the different courses, and I know you can't get the stuff for all of them. But on Pebble, at least he was doing that. And he's been good this course before. He has solo 7th in 2016. For some reason, the odds have been going up. I had him at 35-1 early. Now he's up to 40-1. So I'll take him right there.
Yeah, back-to-back runner-up finishes for Chez Reavie, and a player that is getting really close, and you can't get much closer to this. The only thing, Jeff, with taking Reavie, and look, there's no way that he was going to get past us today, but the only thing with taking Reavie is the fact that means he has to go second, and first. And boy, is that hard to do.
He's been very consistent.
If your name isn't Johnson or well, maybe not Mickelson, but Johnson or Thomas or Spieth, yes, it's difficult to maintain that, particularly if you're playing 3 consecutive weeks. But at the same time, there are players out there when they are hot. We talk about them all the time. Ride that hot hand until it's not hot any longer. And I don't know that that Reavie would have lasted to where I thought he was, where I would have taken him, but no, he was not going to get past us.
All right, so Reavie at 40-1 is off the board. Joel going with, and look, this is what we talked about. There's a lot of good numbers out there, and Joel's gone with a 22-1 shot and a 40-1 shot to get things started. So he's getting close to that 125-1 number already. Jeff?
Ted Potter's at 125-1.
There you go. Maybe you should go take Ted Potter again. You might as well be 1,000-1 to win back-to-back. All right, so Jeff, you've got DJ as your top pick. Who are you going to go with next?
I know McIlroy is sitting there, and I went with him last week, and he wasn't that far off. The 5-putt is what kept him from making that cut, but I'm also staring at Paul Casey, who we know is long overdue for a win, and might have had it 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago at Riviera when he was in that playoff that James Hahn wound up winning.
I had him that week.
But Casey continues to play well. The holiday break really did not affect him that much. 2 starts worldwide, 9th in Abu Dhabi, 8th last week at Pebble Beach, and he's coming to a place where he has played well before. He's another one of these guys that does feel comfortable on the Western courses. He makes his home in Scottsdale, and so I don't know that I'd always lean to Casey over Rory McIlroy, but I'm going to do it this week.
Well, yeah, it's kind of sort of like deciding on either Mickelson or DJ, to tell you the truth. It's that kind of thing where, I mean, yeah, look, we know who the better player is, but yeah, Casey is just, it is really, the run that he's on right now is something else. I mean, that was his problem up until, what was it, probably... Let's see, it looks like that was his problem up until Deutsche Bank, late 2016. And then all of a sudden, he was able to show a lot of consistency, where even, and look, he still hasn't won since 2014, but he was not having good weeks for 2 and then bad weeks for 2 or 3. He was just a very consistent player for the past year, and it really, this run he's on right at this point in time, I mean, it's something else. I haven't totaled it up, but I mean, just taking a quick look at it, it appears that he's got an incredible run going of not just top 10s, but top 25s. I mean, he's got a lot of them in the past, 20 events, 25 events? It seems like he's got like 20 top 25s in his last 20 events.
He has finished outside the top 25 just once since last year's U.S. Open. And in that U.S. Open, he was 26th.
There you go. I like that better. Okay, so let's see. So Casey, by the way, see, Hahn, he pulled a Ted Potter to me back in 2015. So I was kind of singing the same tune on this show 3 years ago. When I had Paul Casey that week, and James Hahn came from nowhere to win that playoff, so I wasn't very happy. Anyway, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a player that I've been taking an awful lot lately, and why shouldn't I go back to Ollie Schneiderjans again? Because he's just playing well, and he's got a couple top 10s in his last 3. He's coming off a 3rd place finish in Phoenix, 8th here last year. He's getting real close. We know he has the talent. And so I'll go with Schneiderjans as my second pick at 40-1. And by the way, besides Revy at 40-1, Leishman's at 40-1, Berger's playing some pretty good golf at 40-1, Tiger's at 40-1. Peters runner-up last year at 40-1, and Alexander Noren, who's playing well, is also at 40-1. Of course, not too long ago losing to Jason Day in that Monday playoff. And Tommy Fleetwood's playing an incredible string of golf right now, and he's 30-1. So there's still a lot of good players left on the board before we get to the long shots. And here's your opportunity, Joel. You going to take any one of those players, or are you going to start hitting the long shots already?
I'm going to take someone that you mentioned. Usually in this tournament, it's been most of the winners have been players who've played it before and played it well. So this kind of goes against that. But Tommy Fleetwood at 30-1. I mean, he's just playing too well. I mean, Europe. I know Rory kind of burned that last week, that whole transition between the things. But I mean, Fleetwood's just been playing so well there, and he's had a lot of good results in the U.S. in big events when he's had the chance. Well, I know you see Mexico's not in the U.S., but still outside of Europe. And he was fourth at the U.S. Open. He had a lot of other tournaments where he struggled in the first round and just came blowing back into contention. He's one of the most talented guys in the field. I like him at 30-1. I don't think there's going to be many times this year where he's going to be in a tournament and have odds that good.
Yeah, I mean, look, he is just hot. I mean, the only thing with Fleetwood right now that you have to contend with is just the time on the golf course. That's a thing. But he has, as you said, he has been able to go to places like Mexico, a place where he had never played before, and play some pretty good golf. So, and that's what we talked about with Rory last week up until the double bogey that took him out. He was playing well at a place that he hadn't played much before at all. And when you're a really good player, even though you haven't played at a specific golf course, sometimes that really shouldn't matter. And he's 30-1, Jeff, and he's back to playing the way that he was playing last year when he basically became a star, and that Mexico finish, that runner-up to DJ, really kind of made a name for himself outside Europe.
Yeah, and he did take some time off to have a child, and I think had the usual distracted fallout, but coming back after the holiday break, he seemed to fall right back into place to where he was. Victory in Abu Dhabi, sixth in Dubai. There are questions in my mind. Can he make the transition, time-wise and all of that over here and hit it hard out of the gate? One good thing in his favor is he's a very good second shot player, and Riviera is typically a second shot golf course, so that works in his favor.
All right, so you have your third choice now, Jeff, and you've got DJ and Casey as your top two picks. You still have Rory, you still have Justin Thomas, and you still have several other players that are available before you have to go to the long shots. Are you gonna go to the long shots, or do you got one of those other players? You got some players that I know you've picked quite a bit over the years, the Mark Leishmans and the Thomas Peters still available.
Mm-hmm. But I was torn between Casey and McIlroy in the last round. Took Casey, not thinking McIlroy would still be there.
Okay.
I'm not going to overthink this. I'm taking McIlroy.
All right. Why did you not like McIlroy, Joel?
No, I think he's great. I could see him coming back, bouncing back at any time. And just the odds 12-1 to 30-1 to Fleetwood. I had those two really close together, so I just went with the bigger reward. I'm kind of going a little bigger reward this week.
Okay. I'm definitely a little bit worried about the setback last week, just a little bit. But yeah, 12-1 still for Rory is something else. When was the last time Rory won now? How long has his streak been going on for now, Jeff?
Well, he was winless in 2017, so it would have been 2016 at whatever point it was.
Tour championship, I think.
Yes, that would have been it.
Okay. All right. So, boy, it's this has probably got to be like his biggest. This is probably the longest he's gone since he's become a star from winning, hasn't it?
Yeah, he's never gone a calendar year without winning until last year. He had, even early in his career, he won once in 2009, once in 2010, et cetera, et cetera. He'd never gone a calendar year without winning until 2017.
All right. Now, he only played 18, though, which was the lowest that he had played in a calendar year. But, so right now it's, what? We're hitting somewhere around 25 or something like that events since his last win. Something like that. All right. But anyway, he's got the runner-up at Dubai and the runner-up at the British Masters not too long ago, including the third at Abu Dhabi. So just maybe a minor hiccup at Pebble. You got the Pro-Am thing. And still, as I said, I warned everybody last week before you watched Pebble that you were going to have to deal with some of those, the amateurs. But I tell you what really killed me last week more than anything was just, once again, we've seen other multi-course events where they show what's going. Hey, all right, let's go to this course. I mean, what was the old Bob Hope has that, don't they? They have multiple courses there, right? What was that? The Career Builder?
Yes, that's the other 3-course tournament on the calendar.
Don't they do that? Don't they go, all right, let's go to the so and so course and we'll pick up somebody there. So it's just, I don't know, kind of weird that they don't do that at Pebble.
Yeah, we missed out on a 59 watch because of that. I was looking forward to it. Once I saw Ted Potter was on a 59 rush on Saturday, I turned on TV trying to see what was going on, and they're only showing Rory, who's a million strokes back, and they were showing off Larry Fitzgerald. They kept showing too, and I'm like, how is this more important than someone about to shoot a 59 potentially?
It's kind of weird, but I mean, I think the one thing though that I think they really I don't know how they would be able to figure it out, but I just think it'd be better if you're not going to go to those courses and logistically for whatever reason they just can't work it out there, then I think they should do it in 2 days. Because it's just, I think on Saturday, a lot of now I know they put most of the top guys available. To make sure that when Saturday comes around that most of the top players are playing Pebble. I get that. But still, I just think it's kind of weird on a Saturday that you've got 2 other courses going on of players and you're not showing them. It's just, I don't know, but it happens once a year. I guess that's the way we got to look at it. It's just, I'm glad now. Next year, is it U.S. Open? How many more? When do we get to Pebble?
Yes. The U.S. Open next year is at Pebble Beach.
Okay, so at least that's good. I'm glad to see that we're going to be able to experience Pebble the way we should experience it, with 4 full rounds of major contact, and hopefully, how's the weather usually at that time of year? By the way, different, a lot more, a lot less.
Typical Monterey Peninsula variable. The one year that I covered the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, the first round was delayed well into the afternoon because the fog wouldn't lift.
Okay. Well, that's good. I like that. I like the conditions, and it's a beautiful golf course. It's definitely the second. I mean, when for a fan, you watch the Masters, and that's beautiful, and then you got Pebble, but it's just but that's it. It just stops there. I mean, there's no way to really enjoy the Pebble Beach event every year. You just can't. And then unfortunately you have you get a long shot like Ted Potter come out, and then you really can't enjoy it for 4 days. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I tell you what, I'll go with, this is tough because some of the players I like here, I like the way Noren's playing. I've taken Berger several times before. I like him. But I'm going to go ahead and take a player that I don't take a whole lot as much as Jeff, but I'll take Thomas Pieters because he had that runner-up finish last year. He's got the power again that we've talked about with Dustin Johnson and with Bubba Watson. So he fits that criteria. And the problem that I have with the other guys, again, they just don't have a lot of time on the golf course. And if you're not going to have either a good reputation on the golf course or haven't played the golf course before, I'd rather go with a player that is comparable, that at least not only played the course last year, but almost won it. So I'll take Thomas Pieters at 40-1 as my third choice. All right, it's long shot time, Joel. 50-1 or higher picks, and we've got a lot of good long shots to choose from here. You've got former champions like two-time champ Bubba Watson at 50-1. You've got Adam Scott at 05 champ at 66-1. Charles Howell, again, if we always say it, if we're going to take Charles Howell, you do it at this time of year, and he loves playing at this event. He's got a win at back in 2007 and a bunch of other pretty good finishes. He's 66-1. Bill Haas, the 2012 champ, he is also at 66-1. And then you got other players like Jimmy Walker at 80-1. Hao Tung Lee is here. He just bested Rory a few weeks ago. He's at 80-1. And Patrick Rogers, we keep waiting him to break through. Cameron Smith, both 80-1. Han, the 2015 champ, is 80-1. Bo Hossler, we talked a lot about him recently. We talked him up last week, and he was in contention for a while there. J.B. Holmes, another big bomber, likes to play at this golf course. He is at 80-1. So there's a lot to choose from. I know it's not going to be easy for you.
It's not. And there's normally I would say I save the like 100-1 and up picks for my alternate. I mean, this 125-1 group is just absurdly good, and there's one name I don't want. I'm going with the high reward picks this week anyway, so why not? I think this guy's got a good chance this week. Scott Stallings at 125-1 has found his game again all of a sudden. He's been very streaky in the past, and he's coming off back-to-back good weeks. He was solo 7th last week, and the week before in Phoenix he had 3. He was a T23, but he had 3 really good rounds, including one was a 65. He just got tripped up a bit in the third. But he only had 2 birdies over his final 3 rounds last week. He's putting phenomenally. He's 4th and scrambling right now. And I think I saw somewhere that he's one of the best putters on POA also. I think for those odds, I can't resist the urge to pass that up.
Okay, what do you think about that pick, Jeff?
Well, when he said Scott Stallings, I was thinking that's probably after being a grouch about Ted Potter all show. I remember other shows where you've been a complete grouch about Scott Stallings.
Yes,
so
I have been.
That was actually the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, because he hit it. You know, he does nothing, and then he comes. Sometimes he'll have like 20 miscuts in a row, and then for a week or two, this is what he does. And you're absolutely right to take him because this is when you take Scott Stallings. The question is he already done? Is his streak over already? So that's the trick.
Maybe. He doesn't have very good course history here, but he has played it quite a bit at least. So I like that he's experienced on it, even if he hasn't finished well.
All right. Jeff, got a lot to choose from.
There is a lot to choose from. For me, there just isn't one that really stands out above the other. But I suppose I'm going to go with the guy that has the most experience probably of anybody at this golf course because he's been out for 20 plus years and has never missed Riviera on his schedule. And there were years where he didn't miss a West Coast swing event at all, but he's playing pretty good. He's tailed off a little bit, but I'm going to go with the familiarity factor, and I'm going to make Pat Perez my alternate.
All right. He's a West Coast guy. And again, he has played here a whole bunch of times. He's had some decent showings. 35th last week. Pat Perez on the border at 50-1. What do you think about Pat Perez, Joel?
I had him last week. He looked good through 3 rounds. He's one of those other ones that kind of got dropped off at the end there. But as great as he's been playing this year, I'm surprised his odds are that good. 50-1. I would have thought he would be like a 30-1 type guy. That's definitely a good pick as a long shot.
I'm actually a little bit surprised to see, even though it's not a big number, I mean a small number, but because there are so many good players to choose from, that I think you can get better odds from. I'm a little bit surprised to see someone like a Keegan Bradley at 66-1 with other guys that I think of. Because when was the last time that anybody could think that Keegan Bradley was had a shot to win an event? Anybody remember that?
3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, probably right.
For me, it would be 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. Now, he was runner-up playoff loser to Bill Haas in 2012. He's got a good, he has played here before in the past pretty well, even though that has not happened over the last couple of years when he hasn't played his best golf. He was a favorite of ours back 3 or 4 years. We'd take him a lot. But those days are long over, and I just think that there are so many. I mean, he's in the same category or just about as some other golfers I'd rather take a stab at. Again, we can say if Ted Potter wins, anybody can win, but that's something that does only happen usually once or twice a year. Anyway, Keegan Bradley, let's see him get in contention. Let's see him do that, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes when he's in contention for the first time, he'll go out and win. Isn't that what happened when he won his major? Didn't he come from like nowhere when he won that major?
He'd never played in the major before.
We had no idea who he was pretty much at that time. So.
Actually, he
won
had
a tournament
been
earlier
a
in the
winner
year.
at the Byron Nelson earlier that summer.
Okay. Got it.
It was.
I feel the same way about Bill
PGA
Haas
Tour
at 66-1. I mean, how can anyone touch him right now? He's just been terrible. I would have put him in the 101 group.
Yeah, that too. I mean, you take a look at the guys like Bill Haas and Keegan Bradley are with, and why on earth are they the same odds as Xander Schauffele? I mean, Schauffele is playing so much better than those guys. Now, maybe it's because he hasn't played there. That's the only thing I can think of. But okay. If you're just thinking of fantasy golf, I'm sorry, but there is no debate who I would take if it's fantasy golf between those three guys. Isn't that something how we've jumped on the Xander Schauffele bandwagon in recent months? But hey, that's what happens. I've got it down to a couple of guys, even though I have a lot to choose from here. But a couple of guys that I've taken a whole bunch of times over the years. They're both sitting there at 50-1. Kevin Chappell and Brendan Grace. And Grace is starting to play a little bit better golf lately. He's got the win back at the Ned Bank. Not too long ago, the runner-up, also at South Africa not too long ago, 20th at Pebble last week. Chappell, meanwhile, has 2 top 10s in his last 3 events, and he's played here more than Brendan Grace has, so he does have that, and that's why I'm going to lean towards Kevin Chappell over Grace here. Chappell has he's in a nice run. Kevin Chappell. He's playing the best golf of his career, especially right around since his win. And I think this may not be a bad spot for him. So Kevin Chappell will be my long shot at 50-1. I'm going to stay with Jeff and take a player right there on the line at 50-1. Okay, let's see. Let's now go. What do you think about that pick, Jeff? Kevin Chappell or Brendan Grace?
I was actually Chappell was the next guy on my list behind Pat Perez. Actually, it was 3 guys for that spot: Perez, Chappell, and Charles Howell. So my thinking is right with you. He's a Southern California guy. Went to UCLA and is in good form right now.
All right, Joel, what did you think? I know you like Brendan Grace a lot.
Yeah, Chappell got kind of exploded at the end of the last tournament. So he's definitely someone I was looking at. Grace, still don't really trust him. He'll have that one great round every so often, but he was just terrible last year. He seems to be coming back around a little bit, so he could be a decent pick too.
All right, Joel. Now your first alternate. Now this is in case any of your top 3 players, Mickelson, Revy, or Fleetwood, are unable to tee it up on Thursday. So who is going to be your alternate?
Well, the smart pick would probably be Leishman. Did I miss someone taking Leishman? I think
Nope.
I heard that.
Nope.
He's been doing this alternate a good week, bad week thing, but I don't know. I mean, why not? Let's take Tiger Woods. He
Okay.
at 40-1. I don't mind having him as an alternate. I don't feel comfortable starting him, but his short game is actually on pretty good right now, and if his driver is just like only somewhat of a liability instead of a complete liability, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him approach the top 10 this week. He looks healthy and good to me. And
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking. I mean, when is he playing again, Jeff? Do you know? Do we know?
You mean after this week?
Yeah.
He has not made an announcement as to his Florida schedule, but consider that next week is the Honda Classic, where he could jump on a bike practically and get to PGA National.
Yeah.
So I think what he's going to do is measure how he feels Thursday and Friday and try to make a determination. Can I play consecutive weeks, considering that I will be able to sleep in my own bed?
Yeah, I think they're doing the Joel Embiid thing for him on back-to-backs to see how he holds up 1 week.
Okay. Well, that's why I was thinking when I'm thinking about Woods. I did take him, of course, last. It's in his first event. But again, I think that the big difference for me was the success rate, and so seeing how poorly he played off the tee, and then mix in with what's his history here at this golf course. I don't think this is the right time to take him, but if he can make the cut again, and if he can improve, I can't imagine he's going to his accuracy is going to be as bad as it was a couple of weeks ago, and he improves there. Then maybe if he does go back to a place where he's had a lot of success, then it becomes something to definitely think about. He is an alternate for Joel though, so I can't argue with an alternate with like Tiger Woods at 40-1.
Yeah, definitely hard to argue it. And then when, should Woods get, his first win post back surgery, Joel can always say, hey, I had him.
I picked him.
And then we'll say, hey, you had him as an alternate.
You did have him as an alternate.
I was too much of a list to start him, but
yes.
I had him.
We will remind you of that as well. Okay, so Jeff, your alternate in case anything happens to DJ, Casey, or Rory, and you've got Thomas. You've got Leishman, you've got Berger, you have Noren. Who are you going to take?
That's a pretty strong group.
Yes,
but,
it is.
I'm going to go with Leishman. Had a top 5 at Riviera 2 years ago. He did miss the cut last year, but I think that was where he was still trying to get his feet underneath him again, and obviously he came out extremely well a month later by winning at Bay Hill, and he's playing pretty sharp right now.
All right, Leishman, yep, he's got that 5th place, he's got several top 20s here, the 5th place a couple years ago, and he is definitely playing some pretty good golf, so not bad at 40-1 for an alternate. As I said before, I picked Berger and Noren lately. And they are playing pretty well. I just don't like the fact that they haven't played here very often. That concerns me. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a player to see if I could make sure that I don't lose any of my funds this week, and that's Justin Thomas. Now, Thomas at least has played here the last few years. He's made the cut the last few years, and the fact is he is a much better player than he has been the last few years. So why not take Justin Thomas? I know he's been kind of erratic recently, but we know how good he is if he just stays away from that really bad round, which has kind of haunted him the last couple of events. Then maybe, because he's at a point right now, Joel, where in his last 2 events, both of them have been top 20s, and we're acting like something's wrong.
Yeah, kind of. And how incredible was his 3rd round last week? He starts with 6 straight birdies, and it still ends up being his worst round of the week somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Kind of really lost at the end, but
yeah,
like you mentioned, he has that big number every so often in there. But I don't think it'll be long before he's winning again.
Yeah, and look, he's 16-1. That's a very generous number. That's definitely worth it. Okay, alternate number 2, the final pick of the day. That is in case Scott Stallings fails to tee it up. Joel, who is going to be your long shot alternate?
I have a tendency to be a little vindictive in this game. When one guy really burns me 1 week, I'm not going to pick him the next week. But I'll give this guy another chance because I just like his game too much. Rafa Cabrera-Bello is 66-1. He's good at hitting. He's good at hitting greens. Right now, he's first in strokes gained around the green on tour. He actually didn't play horribly last week. Since I took him ahead of Reeve, it looked a lot worse than it was. But he still looked pretty good until the until the fourth round. I'm a big believer in his game. I think I think that's really good odds for him.
No Jim Furyk
like
then.
Yeah, Furyk's down a little bit further. This will be his first time playing for a while. I couldn't quite pull the trigger on that. He didn't do too much of anything last year.
All right. Yeah, no, he didn't. And you've got a little write-up at Pro Golf Weekly about Jim Furyk returning. He does have a lot of success on this golf course over his career, even though he's never won there. And he is 200 to 1. All right, Jeff. So you've got your alternate long shot in case anything happens to Pat Perez.
Actually, there's still there's a number of guys that I would be very comfortable taking. So it's a question of picking one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the one that just has my deciding factor is that he's got the longer odds of the group. But Charles Howell has made Riviera a place that he's won, and he's played well at other times there. And we know that kind of contrary to his background, he plays extremely well on the West Coast. So this may be one of those situations where his window might close a little bit after this week. So I'll put Charles Howell in there.
At least one more time for Charles Howell before the year's up, even though it just began. But that's kind of the point. All right, so Charles Howell, 66 to 1. Give him another chance. And I think if we went back into your record book, Jeff, we'd probably see that might be the 40th time you've taken Charles Howell in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's just so if he does win, you better have him. I think that's the way you're going to feel, right? You'll kind of resent it if he wins and you don't pick him. You'll be pretty upset. All right. I'm going to go ahead. As my obvious pick is Brendan Grace. I was thinking of taking him as my number one long shot, so I'll take him as my alternate long shot, also at 50 to 1. Other long shots that were out there that are solid long shots besides some of the ones we've already talked about. And look, Cameron Smith is a good young player. This is the third time he's playing on this golf course. Patrick Rogers is coming off an 8th place finish last week. Sooner or later, he's just too talented, and he may be able to get something going. So I think a couple of those guys are worth looking at. And so Kevin Na is another one of those Charles Howell players, Jeff, that we've taken an awful lot. He hasn't been able to come through. He hasn't won in a while, but he's had good success at this golf course, and he's 80 to 1.
Yeah, he is, but his overall form has been off the last couple of years as compared to when he was, runner-up 4 times in a season. We thought, okay, he's going to break through soon, and he never was able to climb all the way to the top of that hill, and then started slipping back down. He's a solid player. He's a California guy, but he's just not been. He's not been able to have that kind of breakthrough. I was looking at a couple of other 80 to 1 shots. So one is a California native, Bo Hostler. He continues to show well. He's one of those guys, it looks like right now anyway, that can put together 3 good rounds out of 4, needs a 4th good round.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious about Lee Hao Tong. He was good enough to win in Dubai and beat Rory McIlroy, but is he ready for Tinseltown? We'll find out.
Yeah, and what do you think about Brendan Steele, Joel? I mean, that's a guy that might really be interesting this week. He's had some decent success on this golf course, and he was 3rd his last time out.
Yeah, he's got a good tee to green game. I wouldn't have faulted anyone for that. And Hao Tong was another one I was looking at too. It's just hard for someone who's had so little time in the U.S. to be too confident. The talent's obviously there. And another one in the 125 range, I'm not seeing anywhere. Nobody's talking about how good Brian Gay has been lately. He's coming back off back-to-back top 10 finishes. He had a 3rd place like 2 weeks even before that. I know I don't know if he has the length to compete here, and his path in this tournament is just dreadful. I think he's missed his last 5 cuts. But
yeah.
He's just been so good lately, and he looks like he's as healthy as he's been in quite a while.
Well, I had him a few weeks ago as I think it was an alternate.
Yeah, I had him last week as my alternate. He finished, I think, T8.
Yeah.
He's looked good lately. I'm not seeing any of the main sites talking about him. And I was wondering if there was something I was missing. He's just going under the radar right now. He's
That's
playing
it.
fantastic.
Under the radar. And I mean, KJ Choi's got a great history at this golf course. He's 200-1, and he's coming off last week. He finished 26th, which for him is huge because he had a run of missed cuts. So maybe KJ Choi may not be a bad fantasy play this week. You know, a big long shot player who has a bunch of top 20s on this golf course. You know, matter of fact, if you look at it, I mean, he just, you know, anytime he plays here, it seems like he's there. He's hanging around the first couple of leaderboards, so he could be an interesting player. Aaron Wise and Brandon Harkins. What about those players, Jeff? Harkins is 125-1, Wise is 150-1, and they're both playing pretty well lately.
They really are. Harkins has maybe snuck up on me a little bit more than Aaron Wise. Aaron Wise had a very solid college career at the University of Oregon, helped them to that NCAA title a couple of years ago. So that kind of put him on the radar. Harkins is not in that same demographic. He's 31 years old. He's had to work his way up a little bit slower through the web.com system, but now you know, he had a good fall with 3 top 25 finishes, and just, you know, is putting together, you know, one building block at a time, doing pretty well.
All right, Adam Hadwin hasn't played poorly here in his career. He's 80-1. Let's see, Shane Lowry's here. Streelman was 6th last week. All those guys are 80-1. And let's see, Kokrak's played pretty well here the last couple of years. Runner-up a couple of years ago, 35th last week. He's 80-1. Martin Keimer, I tell you what, you know, Martin Keimer, I think it's going to be time soon to keep an eye on him again, because he had a pretty bad rough patch a while back. But if you really take a look at it, like just over his last 6 events, all top 30s. And trust me, as you know, Jeff, for somebody that has taken Martin Keimer to win every big event he's ever won, this is the time that I usually like taking him. Now, I'm not taking him this week because of the fact I don't think he's ever played here. You know, and that, as I already said, I just that's a little concerning for me. And look, he's in the States for the first time this year. I do think there are some things that I think, you know, you need to keep an eye on. That are warning signs, but I just want to let everybody know that, you know, he's playing better than this is a guy that when he moved all the way up to 3rd in the world in 2010, never really recaptured that. He had a pretty good run in 2014, but then 27th, 52nd, 72nd. He's 74th now, but again, a nice
number 1 at one point.
Yeah, during the season, correct. So he's just going through a nice, decent under the radar run over his last 6. So I you know, I think he's getting close. So let's keep an eye on him in the coming weeks as maybe somebody to watch and pick as a long shot. All right. So anybody else, by the way, Joel, that you like, or is that it?
There was more on there. I was going to mention Harkins and then Keimer too. I've said time and time again, if I need a 15 to 20 foot putt to win a major, there's no one on the planet I want taking that putt more than Martin Keimer. He's just has that ice in the veins with those putts. He's impressed me so much in that part of his game. But there's a few other good. Scott Brown was 2nd last year and is still 200-1. Landry's 200-1. He's someone who's been playing well. Sam Saunders. There's a lot of good names on the long shots list this week.
Uline hasn't really gotten off to a great start, Jeff, right?
He's been okay. He hasn't really opened anybody's eyes. Actually, one name that we have not mentioned, but probably we should because he has a win, and he's just on the long shot borderline. But Patrick Cantlay, we know his talent. Mm-hmm. He grew up in Southern California. Through his junior and his amateur days, I'm sure he played Riviera a fair chunk. He may not be a guy to overlook either.
Yeah, no, I mean the Cantlay got the thing that I think at least is good for him is that he 35th last week is actually a good step back in the right direction after the win at the Shriners. He hadn't played a whole lot. And so we know how hard it is for players that finally break through and win, especially with the time off that he had, the 3 years. But yeah, maybe this is. We know how talented he is, so yes. But like you said, I mean, he doesn't have the experience here on the PGA Tour. But hopefully that 35th place finish last week is actually a sign in the right direction, trending back to the player that we've seen play really well since right around since he's been back. I mean, it really is. I think he hasn't missed a cut, has he?
Nope.
Since he's been back.
It's been a while. I without having his numbers in front of me, and so many times there's a sneaky miscut in there. But when he was healthy and when he could start making consistent appearances and not have to baby that back, he's really just been extremely consistent. I mean, just kind of looking at his chart for last year and this year, you're right. He has not missed a cut since putting himself back on the PGA Tour at this time last year. Pebble Beach last year was his first start in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and he followed that one up with the runner-up at the Valspar. So again, Cantlay is definitely a player, sort of like Schauffele, sort of like Noren. These are guys, Fleetwood. These are guys that, and you took Cabrera Bello, that do not have experience on this golf course, but who say is that they can't go out and get it done because they got the talent to. It's just that it just shows you there's so many players to choose from here that we tend to. All right, if I could take this guy, I'm going to go with this guy over the other guy because the other guy just hasn't played here. He doesn't have the experience here, so I'll take the other guy. But that doesn't mean that these other players. This is the reason we want to mention them all because we're going to give you an opportunity. Maybe you've got the guts to take some of these guys over other players that we've already picked. And if you do and they win, and more power to you. At least we're gonna give you the information to make that choice for yourself. And don't forget, if you make a pick. Make sure to open up an account at UWager, and that'll make things good for us and good for you. By the way, Martin Laird is not a bad player, too. He's 8th and 11th the last 2 years, including 9th his last time out. You were going to say something, Joel?
Oh, so the one that's crazy to me is Adam Scott's at 66-1, and no one's even considering him just because he's looked so bad. This is the time of year that he's usually pretty good. His form has just been so terrible as of late, and you'd think this would be a great fit for him. But 66-1 seems really, really good for him, but no one's even considering him. I didn't consider him either.
Do you think there's anything wrong with him?
I'm not sure. There's no indication that there's a health issue. He's taking his normal time off, and this winter stretch right after the Australian events is typically when he takes a long break, but he has just taken this precipitous fall. Do you realize that he was 9th in the world rankings after last year's Players' Championship, and now he has dropped out of the top 50 for the first time since 2001?
Yeah, incredible. That's he's obviously got to have some of those personal distractions, which they all have. I mean, sooner or later, sometimes there's other things that go on in your life, and they become just as important or more important. But back-to-back missed cuts and 3 missed cuts in his last 5. And it's since that PGA Championship last year, his best finish was 25th. And that's it. He's got missed cuts. He's got a 50. He's got a 61st. That answers your question, Joel. Why we're not even going to look at him at 66-1, even though he's got a lot of great results here. I mean, this would be a week where you would think that even though Adam Scott's not in form, that at least he played last week, so he got that off his chest, played 3 rounds, and maybe we would expect him to at least, top 25. Is that really too hard to ask?
Probably not. This is usually a time of year he likes a lot too. 2 years ago, I think he had back-to-back wins in March.
All right. Well, we'll see if he can get it going. And Adam Scott is just too good to be playing the way he's been playing. All right, Joel. So as I mentioned before, you've got your extended storylines available at ProGolfWeekly.com, including a little bit on the international players that we've just discussed. A lot of guys that we haven't seen before, including some that you've put on your list, like Tommy Fleetwood. And you also, as we mentioned, got something on Jim Furyk, Tiger Woods, and so forth. Correct?
Correct. This is. I've got a little bit more on Hao Tong Lee.
Okay.
Lee Hao Tong, but and then Keimer and all of them too. If Furyk is not being talked about too much this week, but I get into him a little bit. He's just the way his career is going is fantastic, and just this last year, since he thought that maybe he had some kind of shoulder injury late in the year, but this is a guy who's got the 2 best rounds in PGA Tour history. He's only 1 month older than Phil Mickelson. I mean, he shouldn't be done. But this is it's going to be interesting to see whether, if he's healthy now, if he can come back and put out a pretty decent season. And so I get into that a little bit. Other than that, we have our my field rankings are on there where I get a little deeper into my top 10. But again, it's ProGolfWeekly.com, best in social media and one-stop web portal for all pro golf tours worldwide. And follow me at Joel J. Cook on Twitter, latest updates, commentary, and more. And I believe it's with the Honda next week.
That's it. The West Coast is over. Florida Swing is here.
Yep.
Thanks, Joel. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, thank you, Bert.
All right, that's Joel Cook, ProGolfWeekly.com. And Jeff, you've got your first look reports at PGAtour.com that will be available to talk about the Honda on Friday. Any big names that we're going to see that you are aware of next week that are not playing this week?
Well, I guess the one that jumps out immediately is that Ricky Fowler, who had a 4-shot victory last year at PGA National, will be defending his title there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So that's a good start. But Justin Thomas, he lives not too far away in Jupiter. He'll be there. Rory McIlroy, it's kind of a home game for him now that he's buying Ernie Els' house over in North Palm Beach. So Masters champion Sergio Garcia, he will make his first start in the States of 2018.
Sergio's back. Yeah.
And so he'll start his run. And Fleetwood, Hatton, Noren, all those guys, those Europeans have committed. Fleetwood and Noren are already here. Hatton will make his first U.S. start next week. So we're going to see the fields now ramp up here through this stretch. Obviously, we got a World Golf Championships the following week.
Awesome.
After Honda.
Where's that? Back in Mexico?
That's the Mexico Championship.
Okay.
And then they'll come back, and you'll see kind of a split of the marquee names. Some will play Tampa, some will play Bay Hill. But by the time we get to the latter half of March, pretty much all the big names are going to be on this side of the pond getting ready for the Masters.
All right, it'll be here before you know it. And by the way, also check out Jeff's Around the Tours report on our website. He'll update you on the fact that St. Andrews received the bid to host the 150th Open Championship. Also, Tony Romo will be playing a PGA Tour event next month. He'll let you know where. And Jack Nicklaus makes an important career business decision. So that and much more, including what's going on around the tours, LPGA Tour, Champions Tour, Web.com Tour, just the whole idea of the title of the report, Around the Tours. Check it out on our website. So, Jeff, appreciate your time as always. Next week, it's the Florida Swing. Looking forward to it. Thanks again for tuning in here for another edition of Prime Sports Golf, brought to you by ProGolfWeekly.com. And as I mentioned before, if you want to wager on this week's event, open up an account at uwager.eu. That's the banner that you see all over our website. Check it out, and best of luck if you are going to wager on the event this week. And remember, just bet some hobby money. That's it. That's all we recommend. So for Jeff Shane, for Joel Cook, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks again for tuning in to Prime Sports Golf on the Prime Sports Radio Network.
Around our minds, an endless red tape to keep the truth confined.